Hello, everybody. This is Liz Lamping, and I was just featured on the Leadership Café podcast with Michael Couch and Richard Citron. Through the podcast, I talked about how the human resource profession has stepped up through the pandemic.
Welcome, and thanks for joining us for another edition of the Leadership Café, where we talk to extraordinary people leading remarkable businesses. We're your hosts. I'm Richard Citron.
And I'm Michael Couch, and we're very excited to have our special guest today, Liz Lamping, who is the executive director of the Pittsburg Human Resources Association. She'll talk to you more about that. But welcome, Liz. Good to have you with us.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael and Richard, both for having me here today and participating in this cafe.
Yeah, we've known Liz for a long time, good friend and colleague. She's done a lot for the Pittsburgh human resources community, as well as for the community in general. So maybe, Liz, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and a little bit more about the work you're doing with PHRA.
Sure thing. And again, thank you guys both so much for having me here today. I'd like to first say just much of my success and the chapter's success and my leadership journey really is attributed to the amazingly awesome members such as you guys that have come together to help share your knowledge and expertise and time to help me advance the HR profession. So thank you for being a part of my journey.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit tell us about that. How did you get to be the executive director? I think I think you're the third Carnegie Mellon graduate that we have out of four guests today. So that's a cool background.
That is very cool. And the opportunity to attend Carnegie Mellon came from my work at the PHRA. So as you mentioned, I am the executive director at the PHRA. And for those that aren't aware of the PHRA, our mission, our purpose really is to create better workplaces. And we do this through advancing and serving the HR profession. We're an affiliated chapter of the Society for Human Resource Management, which is the world's largest HR association dedicated to advancing the profession. And within SHRM, there's 600 affiliated chapters globally. So I'm proud to say that PHRA is the 15th largest chapter within SHRM.
Wow.
Yeah. So I joined the HR chapter back in 2000 as a professional member, and I don't think many of our members today know that. I joined to help navigate my position as a recruiter at the time and just fell in love with what the organization was doing and participated in a lot of their educational programs and their events. And when I heard that there was an opening within the chapter, I went for it, applied, and 15 years later, I am the executive director here at the association.
It's such a great story, Liz, about how you engaged with it as a way to help you in your other job, and then it led to something else. It's such a common story we hear on the cafe where, random chances and opportunities, people who are looking for new ideas, one thing leads to another, and voila, there's your career in a way that you hadn't expected it to be.
Exactly. I mean, there was certainly been a few notable events, transitions, I guess you could say, that happened throughout the course of my tenure with the PHRA. My husband took an opportunity that landed our family in Washington, D.C. for a while, and the PHRA kind of rallied together and helped me to land an interview at the Society for Human Resource Management. So for a while, I found myself working at the world's largest HR association, and I was focused on their strategic planning and diversity efforts, which I feel for professionally just had me grow at an exponential rate. I had high exposure to SHRM's executive team. I was involved with the goal setting and planning for all the departments within SHRM, and all of their departments mirrored the committees within the PHRA. So I was learning a lot of innovative initiatives and projects that I could bring back to the PHRA. Was in that role for a little bit over a year, and just due to the learnings that I had at SHRM, when I returned to Pittsburgh, I became the youngest executive director at the chapter. So, and again, I've been there now for 15 years.
Wow. Yeah, so that's as Richard mentioned, we all the remarkable leaders that we talk to, their careers are never just a simple step-by-step process. There's always unique twists and turns, and what we hear from is that they learn a lot from those kinds of changes and experiences. And I think the other thing that has sort of amazed me about the work you're doing, I think I tell you all the time, Richard and I work with SHRM affiliates all over the country. And by far, the Pittsburgh chapter is one of the best run. The events and the ease for people to volunteer and contribute is great. So thank you, thank you for that. The other thing that others may not know is that you're not local either. You haven't been for a while. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Sure. So when we moved back to Pittsburgh, I was in the role as the executive director for probably about 5 years. And again, another opportunity came for my husband, and this time he was taking us all overseas to Germany. So at that point, I really thought that my leadership journey with the PHRA was coming to an end. However, the association decided to make the necessary advancements within our staffing model and adopted the remote world well before the pandemic. I kind of saw that future of work and allowed me to fit my life into my work life in a manageable way and integrated both of those together. And today I'm actually doing this interview from El Salvador. So our family has moved from Germany to back to Pittsburgh, and now we are over here in El Salvador. And because of the culture that the PHRA has established, we have an environment that makes work enjoyable really from anywhere in the world.
That's amazing. What from a leader standpoint, what challenges did you see that you ran into from that remote leadership position of a vibrant organization like PHRA?
Well, it happened, as I said, well before I think most of the organizations were adopting that work-life balance and remote work. So I had to prove that this was something that could be done, and that with the use of the technology and the tools that we have in place today, you really can do your job from everywhere. I'd say that was the biggest.
What do you tell, so there you were well ahead of the curve on what we're experiencing now in terms of remote work. What are you sharing with leaders and members of PHRA and other HR organizations around ideas for remote work? Usually it's the leader who's at the corporate office and the other people who are remote. Although certainly, you could have a leader who's managing people in India or anywhere. What tips have you been advising, or what suggestions are you making? Would you make to people about the remote work today?
I would say that as long as you know as a leader what your purpose is, your who, what, and your why, you could really do that from anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in a trading room running the meeting, or if you're sitting in another state, another country. No matter where you're at, as long as you understand the purpose of what is being driven, I think you can do the work from wherever you need to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've interestingly we've been tracking culture through the pandemic with some colleagues and doing some research. And when the pandemic and remote work kicked in, productivity went through the roof. But as time progressed, things started falling apart. Because the culture, the connection. I think people weren't keeping your purpose and the mission in mind. Did you find that you had to be more intentional about that kind of, that keeping the purpose in front of you, or keeping the purpose in front of your board or others? Was that a key for you through the process?
Yes, I know personally for me, it 100% was, living in Germany at the time when the pandemic had hit, and with the time zones and things, I found that I was working from 6 o'clock in the morning until midnight. So yes. Trying to keep the balance between separating of the work-life integration would have been my biggest struggle. And I feel that is a lot from what we're hearing from the members was their biggest struggle, was trying to get the balance between the two and really keeping your own mental health and taking time for yourself through this process was something I struggled with, and a lot of the leaders within our membership that I have met with have also struggled with. And if you're struggling with it, your employees are also struggling with it. So you really have to find the time and the tools to help address that.
Liz, one of the things that I've been sharing, and in fact, Michael and I presented at a PHRA meeting a few weeks ago, and we commented on the fact that the issues around, care and concern and mental well-being and social justice issues have become so critical today in the workplace. And certainly, I imagine that when you started, certainly 20 years ago, when I was doing this work, nobody really was concerned about these things. It was on the radar, but it wasn't a big deal about it. What have you seen in terms of the transformation of the HR field? And I think it sometimes defaults to the HR leaders to address these issues. How well prepared do you think HR is? How well do you think the HR leaders are doing in organizations? How much are the business leaders looking to the HR leaders for this to get done? And do you think the HR people are up for it?
100% think the HR professionals are up for it. I am very, very proud of the HR profession for their resilience and their leadership through the pandemic. There used to be the saying, HR needs to get a seat at the table, but I now feel the HR function took center stage, and they're going to stay on center stage. Right now, companies are being measured by the decisions they made through the pandemic and how they treated their staff, and the impact of the ongoing uncertainty, the remote working, mental health issues. They're all forcing organizations to place HR at the heart of their organization. So from supporting their managers with remote work skills or sensitively communicating the consequences of downturns, HR has proven to be vital to the effective management of an organization.
With your connections to what's going on in talent management and the profession these days, if you could put on your pull out your crystal ball and say, what do you see is coming up? Maybe what do you see as some of the bigger issues, to talent management issues that leaders need to be aware of in the next few years?
That's a good question. And there's a lot of answers that I could probably pull out for that. But I would say right now, the topic that's front and center on the members' minds is talent management and just establishing those innovative and diverse recruitment strategies. I think it was just it might have been February or March. I can't remember off the top of my head the exact month it was, but there was 14,000 new jobs created in Pennsylvania alone. So companies right now are hiring like crazy, and organizations really need to be prepared to broaden their horizons when it comes to finding that talent and doing a better job at clearly defining what that talent is that they really need for the roles. Post or pre-pandemic talent and post-pandemic talent are completely different. And it's right now, employees are given the opportunity to rethink their professions and reframe their lives. And the employers need to also be thinking about that.
Following up on that, what are employers doing to help develop their people, to coach them? What do you do with your team in terms of coaching and developing and supporting them in their work? Are there particular strategies, and does that go beyond HR to say, this is what leaders have to be doing? What are you seeing in that area?
Well, leaders themselves right now 100% need to be taking care of their own selves so that they are able to go back and support their members through, or their employees through, their own issues that the pandemic has brought on, so that they can continue to be successful within their own jobs.
Do you have coaching opportunities with people at PHRA that you're making sure they're developing as professionals?
So yes, it's through professional development and finding what it is, really listening to the employees and determining what it is that they need to be successful within their role, and providing them the opportunities to find that professional development, whether it be through educational training, whether it be through coaching, whatever their needs might be. So really listening to the employee to determine what it is that they need.
Yeah, we heard that from a global executive in a previous podcast. He put listening as one of the top three things that he feels he needs to do, to be able to manage, but not just listening, but also learning as he's listening to employees and then taking action based on what they said too. So it seems that your point there fits right in. Going back to the point around being innovative in recruiting, is there anything that you've seen as an innovation that somebody's taking on that really sort of intrigued you?
Yeah, sure. So right now, the PHRA has an award ceremony. It's called Engaging Pittsburgh. It's all about the people. And we celebrate different organizations that are really highlighting people investment and really making businesses grow. And one of the areas that we looked at this year was the talent acquisition and retention piece. Some of the ideas that kind of stood out to me that would be something that would be easily implemented within organizations to really attract the right type of talent would be revamping the company's career page to showcase the employee's experience and what the organization's stance is on social justice, equity, and the belonging piece. Really creating inclusive job descriptions that speak to the diverse talent and the more equitable hiring practices that you have within your organization. So another would be just loosening the restrictions on degree requirements and focusing more on those transferable skills and certifications, those online courses, and the expertise outside of degree requirements.
Yes, I think that's intriguing because we worked with several organizations that had such tight specs for a position. It almost bumped out everybody. Plus, they tend to be exclusives of people with different backgrounds and experiences. Once we got them to think about, wait a minute, what's really essential in this role? Knocking out degree requirement or other kinds of stuff, suddenly they opened up their talent pool significantly. Plus, they also considered a broader folks with disabilities, older people that they may not have considered originally. So I think that's great advice. Great advice.
I think another important issue that we've come across in the Café discussions is around the diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. And certainly I know HR has taken a strong leadership role in this area. What are you seeing around that? Or do you think we're making progress in that regard? Or is there more fundamental things that need to be done to improve those actions?
I think there will always be work needed in this area. Employees they're demanding transparency from employers regarding their stance on social justice issues. We're in a unique place because the membership is sharing directly with us their experiences and what they're seeing. So in Pittsburgh right now, the employers are really making a focus on equity, just bringing equity into the conversation and opening the door for transparent conversations on topics such as pay inequities, inequities within hiring, and overall company representation. We're also beginning to see the transformation to belonging, ensuring the employees experience that they're feeling respected, accepted, and they're valued for their true, authentic self. The equity piece and the belonging piece is what we're hearing a lot from our members right now, and what the employers are implementing more so in Pittsburgh.
Oh, interesting. I was intrigued to see a McKinsey study that looked at the Great Resignation, and they talked to executives about why people were leaving, and they talked with people who left about why they were leaving. The executives said people are leaving for better jobs with more money. The people who left said, I'm leaving because I don't see myself at that company. I don't feel appreciated. I don't feel like I belong. It seems to me that's going to be the kind of effort that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're hearing. A lot of people are leaving because the lack of feeling respected within their own organization.
Yeah, interesting. Cool.
As Mike mentioned before we got started, that you and PHRA was the first all-volunteer group that we were interviewing in the Café, and I was thinking about the leadership challenges of leading an all-volunteer organization, where you don't have, you can't say I'm the boss, therefore go ahead and do this, because people go, who cares, right?
Right.
So what's the persuasion techniques that you use? How do you engage your leadership? How do you this, as you said, this is one of the largest groups in the country, much larger than our population, probably per capita here in Pittsburgh. What are the talents that you've brought that have engage people so successfully in following your leadership?
Working with the volunteer leadership, I think it's just appreciation. I mean, there's 3 staff members right now. So we have myself, the executive director, a member services manager, Catherine Miller, and Judith Hall just recently hired as an admin for us. And 90 volunteers that we work with on a weekly basis. And they are all sharing their time, their knowledge, their energy, their support. And they are all vital to the success of our association. So appreciation, respect, are all things that I think come into play when you're working with volunteers. And again, I know my purpose. So when I go into the meetings, I understand what it is that we are trying to accomplish. And I'm always transparent. I always show respect and try to enforce some accountability with the volunteers and challenge the volunteers as well, because they challenge me and it all comes together. And in the end, we are entrusting one another to ensure that the association is doing what we're supposed to do, which is advancing and serving the HR profession.
Great. Liz, one question that we've been asking, throughout our cafe, there's been a lot of, there's a little bit about what we touched on in our presentation at the HR Academy, is that we've been asking this to our leaders, instead of what has the pandemic and social challenges done to you, what has it done for you? And if we pose that question to you, what kind of thing comes to mind? What do you think the pandemic, the challenges of the pandemic have done for you?
That's a really good question. I think it's provided, and I've kind of touched on this throughout, but I would say it's provided me the opportunity to reframe my life and to realize work-life integration is not working. It's all day. It's truly about taking care of the things that are important to me and to my family and balancing that against the work priorities. I think I've also realized that I move faster than I think, and everybody moves at different paces, whether that be personally or professionally. This applies. It might take me X amount of time to complete a task and somebody else a little bit longer, but that doesn't mean the quality isn't there. As long as we're all beating to the same drum, the outcome will be the same. And I guess it's also, I've realized it's important to take time for reflection and to take a deep breath from time to time.
Yeah, how's that sound, Dr. Resilience? That sounds like a good prescription.
It sounds perfect. And we, the people we've been talking to, we're kicking off. This is our second season, so to speak, of the Leadership Cafe, Liz, and the folks we've talked to already, all of whom are amazing leaders, have all talked about the importance of this reflection. And I think part of that is them as leaders. I think also it's part of perhaps of what the pandemic has done for all of us. We have time to reflect, and we're going for walks during the day instead of just crunching along. And certainly Mike and I have written about the importance of reflection and taking that time. So thank you for validating that in your work and your observations as well. And we want to thank you, Liz Lamping, CEO, Executive Director of Pittsburgh Human Resource Association, for joining us today. This has been a great conversation. Liz, what's a good way for people to reach you and to find out more about PHRA?
You can hop on our website at pittsburghra.org. And as I mentioned throughout, we do have an awesome event coming up, Engaging Pittsburgh. And if you want to learn more about talent management in Pittsburgh, we will certainly be addressing it there.
Great. And as a thank you, we're going to be sending you yet another copy of Strategy Driven Leadership. We're going to ask you to set up the division down there in San Salvador for us.
I can do that.
We already have one of our books, but we will be grateful to share that with you as well. Remember that this podcast, which we're releasing every 2 weeks, will be available on all of your favorite streaming and podcast platforms, whether it be Apple Podcast or Spotify or anywhere else. We want to thank everybody for joining us, especially you, Liz, for joining us today. And for everyone at the Leadership Cafe, we also want to thank Chad Barr, our executive producer and director extraordinaire, for making all the technology work for us so beautifully. And on behalf of everybody at the Leadership Cafe, I'm Richard Citron.
And I am Michael Couch, and we look forward to connecting with everyone on the next episode of the Leadership Cafe. Thanks, Liz.